Wall Street Democrats that are aligned with years of protecting corporate interest over people's interest. That has been Cuomo's ideology for as long as we know. And then 2 weeks goes by, and we are seeing mistake after mistake after mistake, and it all culminated in a very deadly executive order that his people ordered to suppress the data.
Does the future look bright or does the future look scary?
As long as we have collaborative politicians who can see the world as a win-win, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, we all have the same goal, which is to reward hard work. That's all we want. Like, we want people to feel, understand that if they put in the time and effort, that they have upward mobility. Public servants should create a world of win-win, where it's not winner-take-all economics. And as long as we can find that balance, I do feel very optimistic we can get to a better place very soon.
My guest today is Ron Kim. He is New York State Assembly representing the 40th District since November of 2012. And recently, if you turn on the TV, if you're watching videos, you have seen his face, you have seen his name on The View all over the place because of a controversy that came out on a call that he and Andrew Cuomo, Governor Andrew Cuomo, had that's led to a lot of different issues being brought up. So with that being said, Ron Kim, thank you so much for being a guest on Valuetainment.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for the invite and having me on your show.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this. So, let's get right into it. You're seeing Andrew Cuomo 1 minute. We're watching him on a daily basis. Every day I turn on the TV, I see his face more than Trump during COVID. The live conferences that was taking place, he would address the questions. He won an Emmy for it. Then you would see the back and forth with him and his brother. You almost thought maybe one day there would be a TV show, the Cuomo brothers, that we'd be watching. And talks came about him handling coronavirus better than Donald Trump, President Donald Trump at the time. And then talks came about him potentially running for office in the future for being a president, a Democratic candidate. And then there came the fall, the controversy that came out. How did this lead to what it is today?
Well, for a long time, while Andrew Cuomo was making the national circuits, and you forgot he also wrote a book on COVID leadership at the same time, many of us, including the families who were losing the loved ones, lawmakers, community activists, we were on the ground seeing the impact of his bad decisions and policies. So while he was on CNN, we were crying on the floor, on the ground, saying, hey, your decisions are completely isolating our older adults. You're not doing your job. You are not allowing us to see our loved ones. We can't get their medical records. You're giving a corporate legal shield for your top nursing home executives at the worst time, which will lead to more deaths. These are the type of things we kept pushing out. We didn't have a platform. He is arguably at the time one of the most powerful, if not one of the most powerful Democrat in America, with the brother, as you said, Patrick, who's on national TV every single night. So yes, many of us did feel we're getting gaslit, right? Because we see the truth, we turn on TV and they're telling us a whole different narrative that he is a hero when we knew that he was making mistakes, when we're trying to hold him accountable every step of the way.
When did you guys know that these events were taking place? Meaning, was there ever because, before a crisis takes place, you kind of see somebody leading towards potential trends. You say, that's not looking right. When did you guys start noticing trends?
Yeah, so I'll go back to the timeline. When the governor and his top health official came to us early March, this is after COVID landed in New York City and people were starting to get scared. He asked for us an emergency $40 million and extraordinary powers. Many of my progressive Democrats, they were like, no, we can't trust this guy. Don't give him any more powers. I actually sponsored that bill. I was the main co-sponsor and argued against the Democrats. My constituents are scared. I don't think Washington's going to help us in this hour. So let's get behind this governor. Let's give him a chance to lead. And then a week goes by, and then 2 weeks goes by, and we are seeing mistake after mistake after mistake, and it all culminated in a very deadly executive order with a unilateral decision on March 25th, which he ordered which is an order where he ordered 9,000 COVID patients in the period of 47 days back to unprepared nursing home facilities. March 25th. Come April 2nd, into our state budget, when no one was paying attention, when he knew the lawmakers were looking at other laws and budget items, he bullied a toxic poison bill that would give the same facilities what we call a get out of jail free card. They can't be criminally liable or can't be sued for taking in all these COVID positives and transmitting COVID. We saw it, we called him out, and that's when we started to push back. So it's okay. You know what? You might have made a mistake, Governor. We understand you're talking to all these special interest groups and people who have only their businesses in mind, but this is not about protecting the profits. Right now, people are dying, and we need to hold them accountable to make sure that these for-profit nursing homes are spending every dollar that they have to try to save lives. You're not doing that. So we kept pushing back, and all of a sudden, Patrick, the numbers went away. He publishes a report in July that decoupled the nursing home death numbers, meaning he stopped counting. The healthcare experts told him, you need to count the hospital deaths. So if my mother passed away in a nursing home, but she was transferred to a hospital and she died in a hospital, that fatality should be part of the entire data set, so lawmakers can take a look at it and offer solutions. He decoupled it and published a report. And all of a sudden he goes out and says, New York isn't that bad. We're number 40 in the country. I'm actually going to write a book about COVID leadership. And he publishes it in October. All that time period, we're pushing back, release the entire data so we can legislate, so we can actually fix the problems that you caused. That is the timeline. As you know, it blew up recently because his administration admitted to the cover up in a private meeting. And then the New York Times and Wall Street Journal came out recently, said there was even more cover up leading back to that original report in July that they published, that his people ordered to suppress the data so he could go out on national TV and continue to be heroic at a time when we needed honesty, transparency, and accountability to save people's lives.
Now, what could have been different? Say, if he would have come out, what would have been the right approach to take in a situation like this?
Well, the laws that we're passing now, we just passed about 19 bills, having all the data in front of us, which is hold the nursing homes accountable, mandate, especially the for-profit ones. So in New York State, about 63% of nursing home facilities are for-profits. The rest are state-owned, state-run, or nonprofit organizations.
Got it.
The for-profits has had a long history of undercutting staff, cutting corners to maximize profits, as you can imagine. So we could have held them accountable. We could have said, for example, you're getting $100 today of Medicare, Medicaid. Out of the $100, we're going to direct you to spend 80% of that on direct care, which is the right standard during an emergency. But they were spending, on average, 25, 30% on direct care, meaning not hiring enough staff, not putting enough PPE in place. All those things we could have mandated early on, but instead, the governor went the other direction and decided to give the corporate shareholders and people behind the businesses a more or less a blanket corporate immunity, so they don't need to worry about getting sued or being criminally charged.
So Ron, now today, after the 19 bills have been passed, if I'm running a nursing home today, 60+% of nursing homes are for profit. The other 30-some% are nonprofit. If I'm running a for profit, I have to spend 80% on direct care now. So meaning I'm only keeping 20% of the money that's coming to me. Is that what the law states today, or not yet?
So that bill is still being negotiated. That particular bill, we're starting at 70%. And then over the next couple of years, we're trying to get up to 90% of direct care.
I mean, that's gonna also force a lot of people out of the business, right? Isn't that going to force a lot of people out, and they're going to say, you know what, Ron, you're right. I can't run margins on 10%. I'm out of the business myself.
Sure, Patrick, and those are tough and uncomfortable conversations to be had. should for-profit models intersect with the care sector, especially dealing with the elderly population? Is that the best model when the business model itself is designed to extract as much profit out of
Yeah.
Medicare, Medicaid instruments, or do we need better mechanisms?
My dad was when he's had 13 heart attacks. My dad, when he went to a hospital, and it was a government funded hospital in Norwalk, California. And when I went to pick him up, they were just treating him like he was just a piece of meat, laying there. And I lost it, and they kicked me out. Security came. You need to leave this place. And the lady made a very interesting comment at the end. I said, my dad's been pressing a button. No one's going over there to take care of him. What is this all about? And she said, listen, you're not paying for this. This is taxpayer money. Okay. And I was 23 years. That's one of the motivations why I made me want to get to work and make the money, because I never wanted to hear that statement to have the choice for profit, because my experience has been the customer service for profit is a million times better than a nonprofit. If I go to DMV in LA, and let's just say I go to DMV in Glen Oaks in Burbank, which I've been to many times for the driving record that I have, I kind of have a reason to go there quite often. When I would go there and they would talk to you like, stand over there, wait in line. Didn't I tell you to stand over there? I'm like, oh my gosh, they didn't talk to me like this in the military. And they don't care about Yelp. They don't care about customer service. They don't care about, hey, can you write a 5-star review on Yelp for us? Because we would so much appreciate it. No one's getting fired because it's a nonprofit. And so for me, sometimes pushing corporations out can also backfire on the city, and not only the city, the people, because competition is a healthy thing. So that's a complete different conversation. When you said 90%,
Sure.
it kind of triggered the business side of mine.
Keep in mind, when Donald Trump got COVID, he didn't go to a for-profit hospital. He went to a government-run hospital. When we talk about, I know, and I read, and I'm familiar with your background. I respect, as an immigrant, what you overcame as an entrepreneur, and really was driven. I have so much respect for your background, Patrick. But I think we live in a generation. I think we're about the same. I'm 41 years old, and I came in an era where private capital was unleashed in the 1980s after Ronald Reagan. We went in a different route. Before that, we had a tight grip on checking monopolies and making sure that the smaller local economies had a fair share. And the tax rates are much different before Ronald Reagan. This is all stuff that you're familiar with. But we made a conscious choice to go in a different direction, meaning we surgically undermine the public sector every other year, under-resourced, underfunded, different components and localities sold off public services in piecemeal over the last 40 years, backing your argument that market-driven solutions, accountability, customer-driven is a better model for public service. But if you look at the long history of when we achieved the greatest level of entrepreneurship, innovation, is when government actually invested in public capital, and we were able, if you look at Apple, Siri would not have come if we did not have Sputnik, when we had massive public capital investment to drive innovation. And out of that may come different types of private markets. But I believe there is a stronger role for the public sector to reinvest without completely, being combative with the work that you've accomplished and other entrepreneurs in the private sector. But right now, I think the balance is way off in favoring the for-profit industries in spaces like care work, when we should be investing public dollars. But this is it. We can have a whole different back and forth. But I appreciate this type of discussion, because I do have a tremendous amount of respect for your expertise.
I mean, in this topic, I don't want to go detailed on 90%. The only thing is, when I think about a small business and you're not, there is no incentive for it, you're just pushing a guy out and he's like, listen, the hell with this. I'm just leaving a business model and I'm going to go to a different place. But we'll come back to this, because I do want to come back to Amazon. And I know you were one of the first that talked about Amazon when they were coming down, in the 25,000 jobs at 150. But let's stay on the Cuomo issue here. It almost seems like what's happening to the Republican Party is happening to the Democratic Party. And let me kind of paint this picture to you, and you tell me if you agree with this or not. On the Republican Party, you saw what do you call it? You saw Trump's going and running, and there was a camp. I was like, oh my gosh, if I support him, what if the midterms, and what if I'm not going to get people in the media? They're going to say I'm MAGA, and I'm going to get this and this and that, and so then they came Lincoln Project, right? So the Lincoln Project, the McCains, the Bushes, that area, and they came out and they play a very, very, maybe more of a big role than anybody else did in making sure Trump doesn't get reelected. The Lincoln Project did. And then there was division there, right? So then now you have MAGA and you got old Republican, new Republican. That's kind of what's going on over there. Still got 75 million votes, but not enough. 74 million votes, not enough to get elected. On the Democratic side, you're seeing also two camps. You're seeing the Pelosi camp. You're seeing, the Newsom camp. You're seeing Schumer camp. And then you're seeing AOC camp. You're seeing Sanders camp. There's also like two camps. I will give credit to Democrats. They are 10 times more united than Republicans are. I mean, it's not even close how much more Democrats are united than Republicans are. They're not even in the same league. Democrats will at least say, we may disagree, but look, in front of the camera, let's all be on the same page, and then let's fight it out behind closed doors and figure something out here. Are you seeing like a division taking place in the Democratic Party today with two different philosophies? One more, the new wave of socialism, raising taxes, higher regulation. And the other one is more like John F. Kennedy Democrats, where it's like, listen, guys, let's still understand we need Wall Street's money because we're raising money and we're doing all this stuff, so we can't just turn our backs against them. What are you noticing happening down in the Democratic Party?
Yeah, I mean, that dynamics has gone back many, many years in America, where at some point the Republicans all represented the working class values, and then the Democrats. But what's clear is that New York Democrat and Wall Street Democrats has had a long history of creating tensions between the rest of America. And what AOC did say a couple of years ago does resonate with me, which is this should not be about left versus right, but for the bottom versus the top. And when we look at the fight around nursing home, protecting these most vulnerable members of nursing home residents, when you look at the people who are with me and with us in pushing back against Cuomo, it's a combination of conservative Republicans from the right and socialists on the left and progressives on the left. The people that are missing in this fight have been the people who are stuck in the middle, the establishment, if you will, the corporate-driven Democrats, Wall Street Democrats that are aligned with years of protecting corporate interest over people's interest. That has been Cuomo's ideology for as long as we know. We call it neoliberalism and corporate Democrats. There's different ways to describe it, but it culminates again in austerity-minded budgets where we're constantly either flatlining social programs for decades while we subsidize, as you mentioned Amazon briefly. We think the bigger, better corporations are best at bringing in new jobs and creating innovation. So we try to subsidize through taxpayers' tax credits as much of that those type of industries to come in to fuel economic growth. That's been the philosophy of Cuomo and many of the middle grounded Democrats that are in line with them. So it's not necessarily tensions. There's internal, I think, differences of how some of the next generation of Democrats want to lead the party into prioritizing the needs of our most vulnerable and center the solutions around people's needs in the ground. And we're not talking about any complicated things. We're talking about housing, education, healthcare, basic human needs that must be met. Otherwise, what we end up doing is individualizing everything and saying you're not successful because you're not working hard enough, and it's a character flaw, and we're just going to throw carrots and mostly sticks with over policing, and we're gonna fund more police to go into your neighborhood and teach you some character. I mean, that's really how many of our moderate corporate Democrats get their hands off of the situation, because it is very difficult to go back and say we're going to improve the social conditions. I'm sorry. Hi, Hazel.
How you doing, baby?
Amma.
That is so great.
School, please. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Can you close the door, baby? Thank you. Sorry about that.
It's a beautiful daughter you got there, Hazel. But go ahead. You were saying.
So I believe that there is a philosophical divide that's brewing in the party, but it's not an unhealthy one. It's a necessary one that I think both parties should be having moving forward.
Yeah, it's to me, it's my dad told me, he said, one thing about America, you got to know, Pat. He says, America's very good at taking you from zero to hero overnight. You're just like, everybody knows you, but America's also very good at taking you from hero to zero overnight. 1 minute you're winning Emmys and you're just better than Trump and you're going at it with Trump and yay, Cuomo, go bully the bully. And then next minute, no, we got to take this guy out. And, now he's unfortunately, going through whether it's impeachment or being asked to resign. I've seen all the interviews, whether you've done with CNN or Hill. I've seen all of them, what you said, and with the phone call that happened with you and him. So had you spent a lot of time talking to Governor Cuomo before the call that you had where he was threatening you? Was there like regular conversations you had with him over the phone, or was that like the first call you ever had with him?
This was the first phone call.
I got it. Okay. I got it.
I mean, obviously I spent time with them.
I got it.
Social events, even had dinner with them, with other lawmakers, etc. But yeah, this is the first time he made an effort to call me, followed by a number of phone calls on that Saturday, a total of 8 times to reach out to me. So this is really a reflection of the length that he was willing to go himself to try to control the situation in fear that there will be more investigations into the nursing home scandal.
Got it. So it's not like you guys had a relationship and an ongoing thing going on, and then, you guys were talking regularly, and one day he's just threatening, telling you, if you do this, I'm going to fire you. I'm going to, make sure I get rid of you. Okay. So at this point of the game, I think you're, based on what I'm hearing, when I'm hearing different folks talk about it, you guys are hoping he resigns rather than you go for impeachment.
Every day there are more growing calls from lawmakers for him to step down so we can refocus on.
Do you think he will? Do you think he will?
I don't think he will, but as we have more people calling for resignation, the next logical step, if he does not step down, is to go through the impeachment process. There's only been one impeachment in the state of New York, and the second attempt through the former governor Eliot Spitzer led for him to resign, because I don't think any governor wants to go through that process.
Makes sense. Okay. So the other question I have for you is, have you studied what happened with Detroit? Have you looked at what happened with Detroit historically, with what led to Detroit's demise?
In terms of the city going bankrupt? And
yeah, I mean, in terms of being the richest city in the world per capita to not being the poorest city in America.
Well, I know generally what happened, but yeah, if you want to indulge in some of the history.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, if we go back, 1950s, you're not talking 200 years ago. 1950s is only 70 years ago. Detroit is the richest city in America. Their population went from 200,000 to 1.8 million, and they had 200,000 manufacturing jobs, where you're talking about, Motown came from there. You're Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, the manager, those who represented them, Diana Ross, all these guys, and then Ford, Chrysler, all of that. And then next thing you know, New York City started, Detroit started getting a lot of politicians were started saying, it's not fair. They're making too much money. Why are we giving them so many things? Why are we giving them so many tax benefits? And then they bullied these automakers out, and it went from having 200,000 manufacturing jobs all the way down to 20,000 manufacturing jobs, where jobs were lost in the manufacturing sector tremendously, but the municipality jobs increased, meaning more government employees for the city and fewer private jobs. And then today, not only is Detroit known as the poorest city in America, but Detroit's also seen as the #1 most dangerous city in America based on the amount of crimes that happened in 2019. The statistics are up there to see. And I bring this up because my favorite city in the world that I like to visit is the one you're in. I love New York City. There's something very magical and special about New York City. And not only the city, Ron, there's something different about doing business with people in New York. There's an attitude about them. There's a swagger about them. There is an element of, if I don't like you, I'll tell you. It's the only city where I would go as a 20-year-old. You know, when I got out of the Army, 21-year-old, if I went to nightclubs, girls flirt with guys, not the other way around. It's like, if they like you, they come up to you. Everywhere else, you kind of have to like go, but over there, like, hey, I'm like, I've never seen nothing like this before. You know, it's a very different swagger the city has. But then we're seeing the similar trends happening today in New York City. I'm in Florida right now. I left California to go to Texas for obvious reasons. What was going on with California, and I was in Texas for a while. Beautiful state, great for business. They leave you alone. They allow you to do what you're doing. And I moved to Florida. But now in Florida, you're talking about Goldman Sachs. You're talking about all of these companies coming here, both from Silicon Valley and New York City. You're talking about $330 billion of wealth that left New York City. That's a lot of wealth that left New York City. Wall Street Journal just did an article saying those who left New York City, the jobs are not coming back. It's not like they're coming back to New York City. They left to other places. They left to other states to build their businesses. Do you think the way New York's going right now with so many new regulations and bullying businesses to leave, New York City could potentially be the next Detroit?
First of all, I think you're conflating a couple of different things, in my opinion.
Sure.
I think the model of pitting states against each other and engaging in a race to the bottom, it never results in a positive state. Even for Florida, I believe it's a short term.
Can you unpack that? Can you unpack what? Yeah.
Sure. So when cities and states are competing with taxpayers' money to trying to extrinsically motivate companies to come to their states, we engage in an economic cage war, and we're competing to go down race to the bottom at the expense of taxpayers. Detroit is, for me, a model, an example of when we are constantly trying to externally motivate big corporations, multinationals to come in and do business. It's not a sustainable approach.
That's not a sustainable approach.
To be clear, they did not stop subsidizing. They did continue to offer breaks over the years. They did, and the manufacturing companies did get massive bailouts by Washington in the subsequent years of when the companies couldn't compete with some of the other manufacturing companies from Japan and Germany, other global marketing companies that came into the space. So if we are constantly pushing the Federal Reserve to create new money and bailouts and lending mechanisms to bail out these corporations and push the states to engage in a race to the bottom, it's the public sector that will ultimately be at harm. For New York State, it's different than Detroit. Detroit was never the number one. Michigan was never the number one state in terms of economic power in America. New York has always been the number one state. Right now we have a 1.8 trillion state GDP. We are not suffering economically. We, compared to other nations, we are actually richer than Finland, than Canada as a state of New York. We still have wealth. Sure, Goldman wants to take one component of their sector to Florida to engage us, in a perpetual discussion about, well, what can we offer you to stay? What I'm arguing is that the more we engage in that conversation, we are only attracting partners who are extrinsically motivated to do business, whereas we can be grooming companies who are intrinsically driven to be a part of our growth. And that's what's been missing over the last 40 years. Now, I know you're shaking your head, but
yeah, the only reason is because of one thing. You and I are both immigrants. We're the same age. We're a year apart. So we're pretty much, except you look like you're 15 years younger than me. I look like I'm 20 years older than you. That's the only there. You look like you're 22. I look like I'm 52. But, we came here for the F word. If you think about it, we came here for not the 4-letter F word. We came here for freedom, free enterprise, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of, religion, freedom of all of that stuff, right? And, I think the one thing that's going away in New York is that incentive. Incentive is almost seen as a bad thing for businesses and corporations. Don't you agree?
Incentives to drive people to stay here is
No, just incentive. Like, what is my incentive of wanting to build a business? There should be an incentive. Like, what is my incentive of wanting to create commerce or
sure.
jobs? There should be an incentive.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate this conversation because you and I came to this country around the same time as immigrants, and you took a very corporate approach, and I took a public sector approach.
Sure.
And the reason why I took the public sector approach, I was actually very aligned with some of uh, the drivers that you've had as an entrepreneur. You know, I came here. My parents were small grocery store owners in Upper Manhattan. It was like a 5 people, 24/7 Korean grocer. You know, a typical experience of so many Korean immigrants that came here. They shut that down in about 10 years since we arrived here, and they were in financial debt for years. And when I go back to that very
That pain.
that grocery store that used to
Yeah.
exist. There used to be 6 mom and pop stores on that block. Right now, there's a Chase Bank and a giant retail supermarket. That's it, 2 stores. They replaced all the mom and pops. So my journey of where I am now is trying to connect the dots. What do we do wrong where the true entrepreneurs, the true business owners that are adding value in our communities, that we know that when we go spend that dollar in that grocery store, that dollar is being recirculated in our neighborhood. Where do we go wrong where we started rewarding the businesses that are extracting the dollar as much as of our community? The chain stores, the big box stores, Amazon. That's not adding value back to our community. But we made a conscious decision to do that. We stripped away antitrust laws starting in 1980 and unleashed private capital investments and growth without any more regulations and checks. So we made a conscious decision that in order to catch up to the rest of the world, we need private capital to be leveraged and to grow and to drive our innovation since 1980. But what happened is when you award monopolistic growth, the smaller guys, smaller businesses get hurt. We can't have big business and protect small business at the same time. So now my goal as a policymaker is to try to come back and figure out how do we reprioritize the local economies? How do we make our economies more resilient? So every time when we have these downturns and economic downturns, it's not just the big guys that are getting all the subsidies and all the tax credits, and they're actually getting wealthier during these downturns, while all the smaller businesses are going bankrupt and hurt. So that's kind of the space that I'm in.
Yeah.
But you being a much in-depth business person and entrepreneur, I'm always open to people's advice. And how do we? Is there a balance? Do you think?
Well, let's go back. Let's do this. I mean, the biggest thing is one of the things the fact what you just said to me right now, everything changed with my lens and you. When your parents lost that grocery store, how painful was it for your mom and dad and yourself? How difficult was it?
Yeah, I mean, at a very young age, I learned about debt and how debt works and how psychologically damaging it is for immigrants dealing with financial stress. So yeah.
Was there a lot of pressure in the family? Like, did you see a lot of pressure from that?
Yeah. No, I still remember the day when we shut down that store. My dad and he brought me into the grocery store, and he brought a sledgehammer. I had a bat, and he just brought me in, shut down the store, and he was just like smashing all the goods and all the equipment. And I had no idea why we spent 2 hours doing that. And I realized much later on, there's nothing he could have done. The landlord increased that rent, the space by like 800%, expanded the back that we couldn't use. All the government agencies wouldn't do anything to help us. There was no council member, no elected official would step in. We didn't know anyone. But for an immigrant, when you had everything in line, you give up all you had from your homeland to come here to, as you know, to pursue that dream, and to see it go away, and you feel powerless and you feel voiceless. There's nothing you could do is pick up a sledgehammer and start just smashing your own products, and that left a very indelible mark.
I bet.
In my mind.
I bet. It's so crazy. I know you're a true believer. I know AOC is a true believer. A lot of politicians are not true believers. You know that, I know that, both on the left and the right. Some of them, it's more career, lawyer, I want to move up. And listen, there's nothing wrong with wanting that kind of recognition. But I know and respect when someone is a true believer versus just, hey, saying whatever. I know AOC is a true believer. I know you're a true believer. I think sometimes, I have 3 kids and I'm one on the way. Sometimes I think, yesterday we're out there, we're looking at a home, and my realtor, this one lady, starts panicking. It's like, oh my gosh, please don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. I'm like, so my kids are, you know how my kids are. They're walking by the pool, and then it's the intercoastal. So there's the stairs to go down to stand up on the jet ski. And if they fall, they're going to fall in the intercoastal, and they're going down. And Tim's like, no, don't let them. I said, listen, if I tell them not to do it, they're going to do it 10 times. So the moment we walk inside, they're going to be in there. They're doing it in front of me. It's okay. Let them do it. And I says, you know what? He says, I like the fact that you allow your kids to go, and, have a little bit of freedom with themselves. You know what I thought about? I was raised in an environment where it was so controlling. You know how sometimes parents think they're doing the right thing for the kids, but then you don't see the negative side effects, 50 years later? You know what I'm saying? And I think sometimes politicians do that. I really think AOC, yourself, Sanders, I really think, I'll give you Ted Cruz. I really think even the people on the far right, I really think they're doing the right thing. Okay. I really think they think they're doing the right thing. But sometimes, like, for example, when the whole minimum wage conversation came about, right? The $15 minimum wage. Okay. I'm in the small business community, so I'm always dealing with small business owners, and I consult for them. I sit on boards, and I run multiple companies, and et cetera, et cetera. When the conversation about small business owners would come up with $15 minimum wage, and I would talk to somebody that has 17 employees in, Oklahoma City, or, small business, not 1,000 employees, not 500, 17 employees, 8 employees, 9 employees, kind of like your dad. The $15 minimum wage may help the person making $10 going to $15. Sure. But the $15 an hour minimum wage proposal that Bernie Sanders went after Bezos, and Bezos said, what? We have made a decision at Amazon. We are not going to be paying anybody less than $15 an hour. And everybody was like, wow, what a noble thing you did, Jeff Bezos. He can afford $15 an hour. So Bernie Sanders, trying to help the low-income families, that are making less than 15, he indirectly helped Amazon. That policy that I know he's trying to help, it helped Amazon. Then the small business owner that he was trying to help is like, dude, I can't pay $15 an hour to a 16-year-old kid that's my best friend's daughter. He asked me to put her job, and she's just doing bad. I can't pay her $15 an hour. It's 50% more than what I pay her. My profits, I'm going out of business. So, it goes back to the parenting part where, half the time parenting is about not screwing the kids up too much. Right. I think sometimes some of the policies from the left and far left socialist, it's noble, but man, does it have long-term side effects. It's going to be painful. And the people that we're trying to help initially are the ones that end up paying a big price 5, 10, 15 years later. What are your thoughts about that?
I've seen some of your other clips about fixing your creative ways of addressing some of the tax injustice of people making $50,000 or less, or should be taxed at 0%, and that would equate to people making $100,000 and go from there. So I think your intent, the way that I'm hearing it, is actually aligned with many of the left or the socialists trying to resolve a common problem, which is, like you said, New York, America, immigrants come here to make the impossible happen, right? We want to know that when we come here with nothing in our pockets, that if I work hard enough, if I'm an immigrant, I look at you, Patrick, and you are a successful businessman, but hey, one day, if I work hard enough, I can be wealthier than you, just based on my pure hard work. Mm-hmm. I want to believe that. Mm-hmm. Right now, more immigrants are waking up and realizing the system, no matter how hard I work now, I could never beat Patrick.
See, I don't believe that.
I see, but that's what I'm telling you, as an elected official on the ground, feeling the tensions between communities, hearing everyday immigrants suffering, that's that's what they're saying. That's how they're giving up fundamental hope. And I'm saying that is why I think for you, when your position, for people who are in finance, we all have a collective responsibility. Because if the working class people start opting out, saying this game is rigged, it's not rewarding hard work.
Yeah.
No matter what I do, people who were born on third base continue to win.
If we keep saying that, then you make it true. Hitler said, if I tell a lie to myself long enough, I start believing it, right? If you tell a lie enough times, people start. And by the way, I'm not calling anybody a liar. And what a person to quote, I'm not quoting anybody to make any kind of comparison. All I'm saying is, I grew up. One day, my dad and I got into the biggest argument, Ron. And here's what the argument was. My parents got a divorce. Are your parents still together? Are your parents? Okay. And by the way, I had a lot of Korean friends growing up. I don't have one bad memory about Koreans. I will tell you, some of them are quiet, but they can fight. There was this one Korean was a quiet guy, but anytime there was a fight, he had this one kick. He destroyed big guys with his kick. So anytime I see Koreans, I try to have a civil conversation with them. I don't want to get that kick coming out of nowhere. But
don't worry, I'm not a violent person.
No, obviously I'm enjoying the conversation we're having. But one day my dad and I were sitting down in our apartment in Granada Hills. And him and my mom got a divorce. Ugly divorce, wasn't pretty. They got divorced twice in 20 years. Not a pretty sight. They should never gotten married, but thank God they did, because I'm able to do the interview here with you. But he said, all women are this. All women, all women, all women. And one day I just lost it. I said, Dad, stop it. Oh my gosh, stop telling me all women are this. I said, do you want me to believe that? I said, so let me ask you a question. Do you want me to believe that? And I get married and I also get a divorce do you want me to do that? And I said, then stop telling your son that over and over again. He's starting to believe it. I don't want to hear it anymore. And it was a heated moment between father and son. And we've had a lot of good conversations together. He didn't talk to me that night. Next night I come and we're sitting there watching the Laker game. He sits there, he says, I just want you to know you're right. I said, what do you mean? He says, all women are not like that. I just had a bad experience. And I don't want you to believe it. I said, I appreciate that, Dad. I just don't think we need to say that kind of stuff over and over again, because God forbid my kid starts believing it. I don't want them to believe it. So I think if we say, immigrants are feeling like right now the opportunity is not there. If 1,000 people with power like you got power. I mean, you're somebody that in the future could be the governor in the state you're a part of. You're a rising star that's coming up. You're not just anybody. You got a very big upside in your career, right? Very big upside in your career. If we don't speak about the dreaming part, and dreaming, I don't mean social. Look at Obama was a Democrat. He got up and he talked about the dream. This weekend I was listening to MLK's speech was about dream. Reagan was dream. This is not about Republican, Democrat. It's about believing that the dream is still possible. I don't know if I believe that thing is gone or not where it was before. Even Buffett yesterday, last week said, America is still the greatest place, the greatest country to live in, and I think if we get away from people dreaming again, we have bigger problems coming up in the future.
Right. And I'm saying my job as a lawmaker is not to be the salesperson to sell the dream, is to tell the truth about policies that are failing the dream. And not enough politicians have done that part. We have plenty. And Patrick, you can get so many other politicians on your show. They can talk about the American dream and feeling and selling the hope. I'm not part of that cloth, and I'm not going to apologize for telling what I see on the ground, because I do care about the dream. My parents sacrificed everything to come here, believing in that dream. I want to revive that dream. So, but if I can be honest, I'm not saying come and destroy every corporate Wall Street. No, I'm not. I have plenty of friends, and I was one step away from joining Goldman. It's the dream summer analyst job. I played football. I was in the right fraternity. I did everything that I had to do to end up in Wall Street. And I have plenty of friends who went to Lehman and Goldman. So that's my background. So I'm surrounded by them, and I have these kind of discussions with them around dinner tables all the time. But my role is to make sure that the public sector is in a better place to revive that dream. We need to invest in very basic things: education, healthcare, housing, and to make sure that our basic human needs, people's human needs, are met. Instead of saying, "Here's an opportunity, here's a door to opportunity. If you can't get there, that's on you." Uh, Forget the lack of housing. Forget the horrible conditions, social conditions you're living in. We're no longer going to invest in that. It's up to you to figure out how to get to that door. And many people are not getting to that door. And while many politicians are saying, I'm giving you that door in front of you. So it's up to you to get there.
Yeah, I mean, I want to buy that, man. I really want to buy. We got 10 minutes left here, and I'll wrap it up with this topic, and then we'll finish it off. Is Amazon. Okay, Amazon was coming to New York, and they were going to get, you know, the numbers better than I do, $3 billion over a 10-year period, you know, whatever the timeline was. And in return, the investment would have brought back roughly $27 billion into the city. And Bezos went back and forth. I think you were the first to come out and kind of not support the movement. As a matter of fact, I think you even campaigned behind that. It may have been. There was a name behind the campaign, and people over corporate, something like that. I don't know what the campaign was about.
Yeah.
And then AOC came out and was pretty vocal about it. And then de Blasio said yes. And then he changed his mind. Cuomo's like, what are we doing? So looking back now, do you think it was a right move to push Amazon out instead of bringing those 25,000 jobs at an average salary of 150 into New York?
If you look at the history of these mega deals, including Elon Musk in Buffalo, to Minnesota, I forgot the name of the Taiwanese company that cut that deal. And if you go back and audit what they deliver, they never deliver and keep up the promises. And even without the subsidies, Amazon already did bring close to 7,000, 8,000 jobs without any subsidies after that year into Manhattan and other parts of the borough. And they will continue to bring jobs because their main competitors are already here: Microsoft, Google. Finance, as you know, the financial sector, as they're shrinking a little by little every year, the tech sector is growing in New York on its own. But
Do you
without
like that? Do you think that's good? Do you like that?
I think as the tech sector is growing, we also need to make space for local entrepreneurs. I know that we are putting money behind some of the state universities to create hubs to make sure that some of the local entrepreneur types that are doing positive work for local economies, they're trying to create space for them. So we are striking, I believe, a right balance right now. But I have nothing against if Google wants to bring their jobs here, if they're not asking for a dime and they want to invest their time and effort and trying to recruit people in New York, that's a good thing. We have the talent. We have people that are still here, young tech entrepreneurs who are coding, who are coders. And so the companies tend to go where the talent is. So I know there's still intrinsic value, but imagine if we have a subway. Imagine if we have the museums. Imagine if we have all the intangible things that people are drawn to. That is the public sector value that we can create to draw the people and the talent, and the companies will naturally follow, which Amazon is already doing. Um, as far as like other parts of New York, like Buffalo, and when we analyze the numbers, we spend about $1.25 million per one job in Elon Musk's
Yes.
project in upstate New York.
Yeah.
That is beyond crazy. We should put a cap. If we want to continue economic development projects, we should have a cap on how much money we want to spend per one job to make safeguard companies like Amazon from extracting tax credits and taxpayers' money, and also have clawback clauses. Meaning, in 5 years, 6 years, if you're not meeting the goals, we will claw back some of those credits and tax breaks. So that's a level of accountability that we should put into every type of mega deal, which the governor and the mayor did not have. This was just a handshake and saying, "Hey, you get this if you come here," and that's not good enough.
In a perfect world, would you like to see the amount of billionaires in New York City decrease?
In a perfect world, I don't think we should have that much concentrated wealth. New York, as we mentioned before, is still the wealthiest state, but we are the worst in upper social mobility at the same time. That's a fact. That's a statistical fact, meaning, like, you and I disagree on this, but people are no matter how hard they're working right now, there is no upward social mobility. And that is a direct result of the extreme concentration of power and wealth at the top. So, moving forward, there is a duty, especially at a time in a crisis. There's never been at a time in American history when we had a social health economic crisis when the people at the very top, the 1%, the 5%, didn't pay their fair share to take care of the rest of society. The top 1 to 5% have made much more money during this period, while the rest of us are suffering. And at minimum, what we're asking for our constituents is to share the burden together.
So the wealth tax of Elizabeth Warren is something you support. You like the wealth tax.
We have our own version of a New York wealth tax, which goes beyond property tax, because right now our tax codes are entirely based on property, real property, but it's been very difficult to codify and capture real wealth in the forms of stock transfers and a number of different intangible things, capital assets that IRS traditionally had a hard time tracking. But in the last 10 years, they've added more mechanisms to keep track of inflation and how those capital assets are drawing income. People are drawing income from those capital assets in a much more accurate way. So I believe if there's a will, we can look at what real wealth tax looks like versus just relying on real property tax, which at that point, that means we are relying more on the upper middle class Americans to carry the burden of a wealth tax if we just rely on real property tax.
So I'll give you the final, words here. Tell us how you envision the future. Does the future look bright or does the future look scary?
The future does look bright, Pat.
Okay, good. There you go.
I believe
we got optimism.
There's millionaires in New York, also trying to get tax justice. You were talking about, you are a very wealthy businessman, and you're talking about not taxing people $50,000. That is insane. Like for you to come to that conclusion.
You think that's a bad idea?
No, I'm saying that's amazing.
You know why I like that idea? Here's why I like that idea.
Stuff like that.
You know why I like that idea? I like that idea because the burden doesn't go on the small business owner and the burden doesn't go on the employee. Why are we taxing people less than 50K anyways? Just let them keep 100%. Right. And then we can put a flat tax above it. I know you would want progressive, but we could put a flat tax above it. Right. But allow more people to keep it. But go ahead, keep going. Your final thoughts about the future and how you see things working out.
So I think the more we have these discussions and respectful discussions, obviously you and I differ in some policies, but I believe we can come to a consensus because capitalists and socialists and Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, we all have the same goal, which is to reward hard work. That's all we want. We want people to understand that if they put in the time and effort, that they have upward mobility. It's a very simple formula what the American dream is. And if we all put our heads together, we can get to that better place. As long as we don't have authoritative, demagogic politicians like Trump and Cuomo that come from the same cloth. They're about control and they're about abusing power. As long as we have collaborative politicians who can see the world as a win-win world. It doesn't have to be a win-lose. You're in the business of win-lose. I understand that. But public servants should create a world of win-win, where it's not winner-take-all economics. And as long as we can find that balance, I do feel very optimistic we can get to a better place very soon.
It's crazy. The most money I ever made is deals that I did that were win-win. Most money I ever made were deals that I did were win-win. At the beginning, the 20-year-old Pat would be win-lose.
Yeah.
But as I matured and I made a ton of mistakes as an amateur, I realized the biggest money-making opportunities are when there's a win-win because more people want to see you win as well. So essentially, your investment is also protected. More than anything else, Ron, I so enjoyed this conversation because, opposing philosophies, some areas we have similar philosophies in, but we share one thing. We believe in America. We believe America's a great country and we want to make it better. And I appreciate you coming on and being a guest on Valuetainment.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
You got it, buddy. Take care. So two similar stories here. Ron comes here from Korea. I come here from Iran. We're about the same age, 1 year apart. My kids sometimes interrupt me on a Zoom, so does his. He goes into politics, I go into business. Later on, we believe in a different dream, a different American dream. He thinks currently times are challenging where somebody doesn't believe that it's possible for one day somebody to become extremely successful. I believe. What do you think? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. And I did a similar type of a conversation and banter I had with Richard Wolff, professor. He is probably, Forbes says, the most respected, reputable socialist professor in America. And we had a good debate together about socialism and capitalism. If you've never watched it, click over here to watch it. With that being said, have a great day, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.